Khloé Kardashian walked onto the Kelly Clarkson Show stage to a wave of cheers. Her tall frame and sleek, figure-hugging white jumpsuit catching the light as she smiled and waved to the crowd. Kelly greeted her warmly with a hug, the two exchanging a quick laugh before settling into their seats on the plush couch. For the first several minutes, the atmosphere was light. Khloé spoke about her latest business ventures, her fitness journey, and her role as a mother, while Kelly kept the conversation upbeat and encouraging. The audience responded enthusiastically, clapping and laughing at the right moments. But the mood shifted when Kelly, flipping to a new card, leaned forward slightly and said, "You've been very open about the challenges of living in the public eye. But there have been some recent headlines that people have been curious about." Khloé's smile dimmed just slightly, though she kept her posture relaxed. "I know," she said evenly, "and people can be curious all they want. It doesn't mean I have to answer everything." Kelly gave a small nod but continued, "I understand that. But you did post some things on social media recently that had fans and media talking, especially about family tensions. Was that intentional?" The audience let out a soft murmur at the question, sensing the interview was turning in a more personal direction. Khloé crossed one leg over the other, her hand resting deliberately on her knee, the faintest hint of steel in her voice. "Kelly, I'm not here to feed gossip," she said. "If I post something, it's because I want to, not because I'm trying to start a war." The crowd gave a light applause, but the air in the room was already feeling denser, as if everyone could sense the conversation about to tip into more volatile territory. Kelly kept her tone light, but the curiosity in her eyes was unmistakable. She set the card down on the coffee table between them, leaning forward just slightly. "I'm not talking about gossip," she said. "I'm talking about when you post something that clearly has meaning, like that story with the quote about trust being earned, not given." A lot of people assumed it was aimed at someone specific. The audience murmured softly, the words hanging in the air. Khloé's lips curved into a faint smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "People assume a lot about me, Kelly. I can't control what they read into things." Kelly nodded but didn't let the moment go. "Sure, but you know your followers. You know how they'll react, don't you think? In a way, you're sending a message." Khloé shifted in her seat, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "If I wanted to send a message, trust me, it wouldn't be through an Instagram story," she said, the edge in her tone noticeable now. A small wave of oohs rippled through the crowd, part amusement, part anticipation. Kelly smiled, politely, but pressed again. "Still, timing is everything. And that post went up right after certain rumors about your family started circulating?" Khloé's expression tightened for a split second before she replied, "And maybe that's just coincidence. Or maybe it's my way of reminding people I have boundaries." The audience reacted with a mix of applause and low chatter, the atmosphere sharpening as the friendly banter began to give way to something more pointed. Kelly's posture shifted, her shoulders straightening as she regarded Khloé with the kind of steady gaze that told the audience she wasn't going to back away from the subject. "I get that you have boundaries," she said carefully, "but sometimes it feels like you're hinting at things without saying them outright. And that leaves the door wide open for speculation." Khloé let out a short, almost incredulous laugh, shaking her head. "Kelly, I can't live my life based on how strangers might speculate. If I did that, I'd be in a constant state of explaining myself, and frankly, I'm over it." Audience responded with a light smattering of applause, though the undercurrent of tension was undeniable. Kelly leaned forward slightly, her voice still calm, but with a sharpened edge. "But you've built a brand on letting people into your life. Doesn't that come with a certain level of openness?" Khloé's smile faded, her expression flattening into something more guarded. "Letting people into my life doesn't mean giving them a key to every locked door," she replied firmly. "There's a difference between sharing and putting my entire personal life on display for dissection." A few audience members nodded in agreement, while others glanced at each other, sensing the growing rift. Kelly didn't break eye contact. "I hear you, but when you put certain things out there, you can't be surprised when people connect the dots." Khloé's jaw tightened. Or maybe people should stop trying to connect dots that aren't theirs to connect. The applause that followed was louder this time, but it was mixed with a restless murmur. the kind of sound that meant the crowd knew this conversation wasn't done escalating. Kelly hesitated only for a moment before deciding to press on, her voice still measured but carrying more weight now. "Khloé, I'm not trying to dig where I'm not welcome," she began. "But people notice that your recent posts and interviews have come at the same time as headlines about your relationship with your sisters. Some think you're sending indirect messages about them." The audience reacted with a ripple of murmurs, a few audible gasps breaking the quiet. Khloé's eyes narrowed slightly, though her tone stayed controlled. "You're right, you are digging where you're not welcome," she said flatly, earning a few surprised laughs from the crowd. Kelly gave a small, diplomatic smile. "I just think people appreciate honesty." Khloé leaned forward now, her voice dropping lower but sharper. "Honesty doesn't mean spilling every private moment on daytime television. Some things belong to me, and I don't owe the public an explanation for every rumor they read." The crowd responded with a mix of applause and tension-filled silence, the room's energy tightening like a coiled spring. Kelly, undeterred, replied, "I understand that, but don't you think avoiding the topic entirely just fuels more speculation?" Khloé's smile returned, but it was thin, without warmth. Maybe that's not my problem to fix." Her words hung in the air like a challenge. The audience caught between admiration for her firmness and curiosity about what might come next. Offstage, a producer shifted in his seat, signaling to a floor manager the universal sign that things were teetering on the edge. Asterisk. The applause from her last remark had barely faded when Kelly, perhaps sensing the audience's hunger for resolution, tried one more time to pry the door open. "I hear you," she said evenly. "But when you live so much of your life in public, completely shutting down questions about certain things can make it look like you're hiding something." That line drew an audible "oh" from the crowd, the sound feeding the tension already hanging in the air. Khloé's expression hardened, her smile vanishing entirely. "Or maybe," she said slowly, "it means I'm protecting my peace, which, by the way, is more important to me than anyone's curiosity." She uncrossed her legs, leaning forward as if to punctuate her point. "I came here to talk about my work and the things I care about, not to be cornered into defending myself over gossip." Kelly tried to respond, but Khloé was already shaking her head, her voice gaining an unmistakable finality. "I'm done having this conversation." She stood in one smooth motion, her heels clicking sharply on the stage floor as she turned toward the side exit. The crowd erupted, some clapping in support, others gasping in disbelief, phones already out to record. Kelly's eyes widened slightly, but she stayed seated, watching as Khloé strode toward the curtain with her shoulders back and chin high. Just before disappearing off stage, Khloé glanced over her shoulder and said, "Good luck with the rest of the show." The words landed like a period at the end of a sentence no one had expected to hear. Asterisk. For a long moment after Khloé disappeared behind the curtain, the studio was suspended in an uneasy stillness, the sound of her heels fading into the backstage corridors. Kelly remained on the couch, her hands clasped loosely in her lap, her expression composed, but edged with a faint, unspoken surprise. The audience seemed unsure how to respond. A few offered hesitant applause, others whispered to their neighbors, the low hum of conversation filling the air. Somewhere off stage, muffled voices rose and fell quickly, no doubt her publicist and the producers already in quiet damage control mode. Kelly inhaled slowly, then looked directly into the camera, her voice warm but deliberate. "Well, that's live TV for you," she said with a small, practiced smile. "Sometimes the conversations go places you don't expect." A ripple of polite laughter and applause followed, though the energy in the room was still heavy with what they had just witnessed. She glanced toward the band, giving the subtle cue to play them into a break, and the smooth notes of an upbeat tune began to fill the space. As the camera slowly panned out, Kelly's smile stayed in place, but her eyes flickered briefly toward the curtain, as if still processing how quickly the interview had turned. Behind the scenes, Khloé was already halfway down the hallway, her coat in hand, her stride unbroken, the show moving on without her. But the moment already cemented as the headline of the day. The second the cameras cut to commercial, The calm veneer of live television dissolved into hurried movement and hushed but urgent voices. Backstage, Khloé strode past a cluster of crew members without slowing. Her long coat draped over her arm, her phone already in hand. Her publicist, heels clicking in rapid pursuit, called after her, "Khloé, let's just talk for a second." But Khloé didn't look back. "We'll talk in the car," she said, her voice clipped. Stage manager near the curtain exchanged a wide-eyed glance with another crew member, both silently acknowledging they'd just been part of a moment that would live online within the hour. In the green room, Kelly's producers were already fielding texts from network executives asking for a detailed rundown of what happened, while a junior staffer pulled up social media to find that audience members had already posted shaky, grainy clips of Khloé's exit. "It's trending," the staffer announced, holding up her phone. Back on stage, Kelly sipped from her water bottle and took a slow, steady breath as the makeup team dabbed at her cheekbones. "We'll pivot," she told the floor manager with a small smile. But as she glanced toward the curtain where Khloé had vanished, she knew the rest of the day's segments would play out in the shadow of that walk-off, a moment that would be replayed, analyzed, and debated long after the lights dimmed. By the afternoon, clips of Khloé's walk-off were everywhere, replayed on entertainment news shows, dissected on podcasts, and trending across multiple platforms under hashtags like hashtag KHLOE storms off and hashtag KellyV's KHLOE. Headlines ranged from Khloé Kardashian draws the line on daytime TV to Kelly Clarkson interview turns tense, each framing the moment with its own spin. On Twitter, fans debated fiercely, some applauding Khloé for standing her ground and refusing to feed into gossip, others criticizing her for being unwilling to face tough questions. In Los Angeles, paparazzi were camped outside her house by early evening, shouting questions as she stepped out briefly with sunglasses and a hood pulled low. Meanwhile, Kelly's team released a short, carefully worded statement about respecting boundaries and moving forward, which only seemed to fuel the online discourse further. Clips from the episode racked up millions of views on TikTok within hours, with users adding dramatic background music, slow-motion replays, and split-screen reaction videos. By nightfall, it was clear that the exchange had jumped from a daytime TV moment to a full-blown pop culture talking point. The kind of unscripted flashpoint that would be remembered far longer than whatever segment had been planned next. The next morning, Kelly arrived at the studio before sunrise, the city still wrapped in the quiet haze of early dawn. She carried her coffee into her dressing room, greeting only a few crew members on the way, her phone already buzzing with fresh notifications and messages from friends checking in. She sat for a moment in the silence, letting the events of the previous day settle. Replaying the moment, Khloé stood up in her mind. Across town, Khloé was at home, curled up on her couch in sweats, scrolling through the endless stream of online commentary. Her phone was a mix of supportive texts from family and pointed questions from journalists, all of which she ignored. A muted morning show on her TV was already replaying the clip, panelists debating whether she had overreacted or simply set healthy boundaries. Khloé muted the volume, tossed the remote aside, and took a deep breath, deciding to focus on her own plans for the day. For both women, the incident had already shifted from an in-the-moment clash to something heavier, a media narrative they couldn't completely control. And while the world was still talking about it, each of them knew that eventually another headline would take its place. But not before the echoes of that afternoon faded from the public's memory. Asterisk.